The morning sun rose over New Busan like it had every day for the past 20 years. Kim Tae-ho stood on his office balcony, watching the golden light spread across endless fields of grain. The wheat swayed in the gentle breeze, ready for harvest. 2.5 million people called this world home, and they had built something beautiful here. "Father, the quarterly reports are ready," Park So-min called from inside his office. She walked out onto the balcony, carrying a tablet filled with numbers that showed their success. Food production was up 15% from last year. The colony was thriving. Kim Tae-ho smiled at his daughter. At 28, she had become one of the colony's best scientists. She studied the local plants and animals, finding new ways to help humans and native life work together. Her research station sat just outside the main city, where she worked with her partner, Lee Jun-woo. "The Federation inspectors will be pleased," Kim Tae-ho said, taking the tablet. "We're ahead of all targets." Park So-min frowned. "I don't trust them, Father. The new taxes they want us to pay are too high. We barely make enough to cover them. We have no choice, daughter. The Federation protects us from pirates and hostile aliens. We must pay our part." Park So-min wanted to argue, but she knew her father was right. Humans were new to this part of space. They needed the Federation's protection even if it cost them dearly. Across the city, Lee Jun-woo was working in the research lab. He had been studying samples from the northern forests when his computer started flashing red warnings. Satellite readings showed massive energy signatures approaching from deep space. "That's strange," he muttered, checking the readings again. "So-min, are you seeing this?" "Park." So-min looked at her own screen from across the lab. "Those look like ship signatures, but they're huge, much bigger than any trade vessel." Lee Jun-woo's face went pale. "So-min, I think we need to call your father. Right now." Before Park So-min could reach for her communicator, every screen in the lab went black. Then a voice spoke in the common galactic language. "Attention, human colonists. This is Admiral Vextar of the Third Fleet. Your colony has been marked for cleansing. You have violated Federation law by refusing to pay proper taxes. Prepare for orbital bombardment." Park So-min's hands shook. "They can't be serious. We've paid every tax they asked for." Lee Jun-woo was already running toward the emergency communication panel. "It doesn't matter what we paid. They've decided we're a problem." Across the city, alarms began to wail. Kim Tae-ho burst into the emergency command center, his face grim. The military commander, Colonel Bae In-soo, was shouting orders to his staff. "Sir, we have 47 Federation battleships in orbit," Colonel Bae In-soo reported. "They're charging weapons." "This has to be a mistake," Kim Tae-ho said, but even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't. "Open a channel to their fleet." The main screen flickered to life, showing a massive reptilian creature in a dark uniform. Admiral Vextar's yellow eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. "Admiral, I am Kim Tae-ho, administrator of New Busan Colony. There must be some mistake. We have paid all required taxes and followed all Federation laws." Vextar's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "There is no mistake, human. Your species has spread too quickly through our space. You consume resources that belong to superior races. The Federation Council has decided that examples must be made." "We have over 2 million civilians here," Kim Tae-ho pleaded. "Families, children, innocent people who have done nothing wrong." "Insects," Vextar said simply. "Your evacuation request is denied. Bombardment begins in 1 hour." The screen went dark. Colonel Bae In-soo looked at Kim Tae-ho with desperate eyes. "Sir, we have maybe 12 defense platforms and a few patrol ships. We can't stop 47. Battleships." Kim Tae-ho's mind raced. In 1 hour, everything they had built would be destroyed. All these innocent people would die. "Colonel, forget about fighting them. Focus on evacuation. Get every ship we have ready to carry civilians." "Sir, we have maybe 20 cargo ships and some shuttles. That's enough for maybe 1,000 people at most. Then we save who we can." Back at the research station, Park So-min and Lee Jun-woo were frantically downloading their data. Years of research about New Busan's ecosystem, along with detailed scans of Federation ship designs they had secretly studied. "We need to get this to Earth," Park So-min said, loading everything onto portable drives. "Someone needs to know what happened here." Lee Jun-woo nodded grimly. "The Federation thinks humans are weak because we're new to space. They don't understand what we're really like." Across the colony, families ran toward the spaceport with whatever they could carry. Parents held crying children, while elderly people were helped along by neighbors. The evacuation ships filled quickly, but there were far too few seats for everyone. Kim Tae-ho stood in the command center coordinating the evacuation. He refused offers to board the first ships, saying he would leave on the last one. Through the windows, he could see the Federation battleships like dark stars against the blue sky. "Father, you need to come now." Park So-min's voice crackled over the communicator. She was at the spaceport with Lee Jun-woo, helping load the final evacuation ship. "The ships are almost full. I'll be there soon, daughter. I'm sending the final data burst to Earth first." Kim Tae-ho typed quickly, uploading everything he could to a communication probe. Video of Admiral Vextar's threat, records of all taxes paid, proof that New Busan had followed every Federation law. Most importantly, he included a complete record of the Federation fleet positions and ship types. "If we don't survive this," he said into the recorder, "let Earth know that we died as humans. We built something good here. We helped each other. We showed the galaxy what humanity could be. Don't let them say we were just insects." He launched the probe just as the first energy beams struck the planet's surface. The bombardment was terrible to watch. Bright blue plasma rained down from the sky, turning buildings to ash and glass. The beautiful grain fields that had fed 12 star systems burst into flame. The forest where Park So-min had discovered new species became burning wastelands in seconds. From the evacuation ship, Park So-min watched her homeworld die. The city where she had grown up disappeared under waves of fire. The research station, where she and Lee Jun-woo had worked for years, became a crater. "So many people," Lee Jun-woo whispered, his face pressed against the window. "They're killing everyone." Park So-min couldn't speak. She just held onto the data drives that contained everything they had learned. Somewhere in that information might be the key to stopping this from happening again. The evacuation ships tried to reach the edge of the system, but Federation fighters hunted them down. Of the 20 ships that launched, only 3 made it past the orbital blockade. The others were destroyed along with everyone aboard. Kim Tae-ho's ship was one of the ones that didn't make it. Park So-min watched the explosion through tears, knowing her father had died trying to save others. The bombardment continued for 3 days. Admiral Vextar wanted to make sure nothing survived. When it was over, New Busan was a dead rock covered in radioactive ash. Every city was gone, every farm was burned. Every sign that humans had ever lived there was erased. Of the 2.3 million people who had called New Busan home, only 847 survived in the 3 ships that escaped. They drifted in space for weeks, rationing food and air, hoping someone would find them before their supplies ran out. Park So-min became the senior colonial official by default, since everyone above her was dead. She spent her time going through the data they had saved, learning everything she could about Federation tactics and technology. "They made a mistake," she told Lee Jun-woo one night as they shared a ration pack. "They think they killed just another weak colony. They don't know what humans are really like when we're angry." Lee Jun-woo looked at the data on his screen. Ship specifications, fleet movements, communication codes. "You think Earth will fight them?" "I think Earth will do more than fight them," Park So-min said quietly. "I think Earth will show them what happens when you murder human families." Eventually, a human patrol ship found the survivors and brought them home. As they traveled toward Earth, Park So-min prepared her testimony. She would tell the leaders of humanity exactly what the Federation had done. She would show them the evidence of the murder of 2.3 million innocent people, and she would watch as humanity decided what justice looked like. The Federation had made their statement. They had shown the galaxy what happened to humans who refused to kneel. They had demonstrated their power by erasing an entire world, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had let some humans live to tell the story. Admiral Vextar returned to his home base proud of his efficient work. He filed a report stating that the human pest problem in Sector 7 had been resolved. He expected praise from the Federation, counsel for his decisive action. He had no idea that his decisive action had just started a war that would end with his entire empire in ruins. The Federation thought they understood humans. They thought they were dealing with another weak species that would submit when faced with superior force. They thought wrong. As the survivor ships approached Earth, carrying their terrible news, the Federation congratulated itself on teaching the humans a lesson. They believed they had shown humanity its place. 6 months after New Busan died, the communication probe finally reached Earth. It had traveled through hyperspace for weeks, carrying its terrible cargo of death and betrayal. When Earth's deep space monitoring stations detected the small probe, they thought it was routine communication from one of the outer colonies. President Choi Dong-min was in a budget meeting when his aide burst through the doors. The young man's face was white with shock, his hands shaking as he held a datapad. "Sir, you need to see this immediately. It's from New Busan Colony." President Choi Dong-min frowned. "Can't it wait? We haven't heard from them in months, but that's normal for the outer colonies." "Sir, there's a reason we haven't heard from them." The aide's voice cracked. "They're all dead. Every single one of them." The budget meeting ended immediately. President Choi Dong-min rushed to the emergency briefing room, where Defense Minister Yoon Hae-ryum was already waiting with her senior staff. The main screen showed the first images from Kim Tae-ho's final transmission. 2.3 million civilians, Defense Minister Yoon Hae-ryum said quietly. Murdered by Federation forces without warning. They called it pest control. President Choi Dong-min watched in horror as the video played. Admiral Vextar's cold yellow eyes filled the screen as he dismissed human lives as worthless insects. The president saw Kim Tae-ho's desperate attempt to negotiate, his plea for the innocent families. Then came the bombardment footage. Cities burning, forests turning to ash. Children's screams cut off as plasma fire consumed their schools. "How many ships did they use?" President Choi Dong-min asked, his voice hollow. 47 battleships, Commander Jang Min-ho replied. He was Earth's senior military strategist, a career officer who had spent his life preparing for exactly this kind of crisis. A full Federation fleet group. They wanted to make sure nothing survived. What are our current military capabilities? Defense. Minister Yoon Hae-ryum pulled up another screen showing Earth's defenses. We have approximately 50,000 ships total, counting everything from battleships to patrol craft. The Federation has over 10 million ships across all member species. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the numbers. Even if every human world contributed every ship they had, they would still be outnumbered 200 to 1. They planned this, Dr. Hanna Young said from her seat at the analysis table. She was Earth's leading expert on alien military tactics, a woman who had spent years studying Federation battle strategies. This wasn't a punishment for unpaid taxes. They wanted to test our response. President Choi Dong-min looked at her sharply. What do you mean? Look at the ship types they used. All heavy battleships, maximum firepower. They could have destroyed the colony with 1/10 of that force. They brought a full fleet to kill farmers and scientists. They wanted to see if we would fight back. Commander Jang Min-ho nodded grimly. It's a classic Federation tactic. Destroy one target completely to terrorize the others into submission. They expect us to surrender rather than face the same fate. And if we don't surrender? President Choi Dong-min asked. Then they'll keep destroying colonies until we do. The president stared at the screen, watching the endless loop of destruction. Somewhere in that burning hell, Kim Tae-ho had died trying to save his people. Thousands of families had been incinerated for the crime of being human. When will the survivors arrive? He asked. 3 days, sir. The rescue ships found them drifting near the system edge. Only 847 people made it out alive. President Choi Dong-min made his decision. I want every government leader, every military commander, every colony representative here when they arrive. and I want every news service in human space to broadcast their testimony live. Defense Minister HFY Rim looked concerned. Sir, if we publicize this, it might cause panic. People will be terrified that their colonies are next. Good, President Choi Dong-min said coldly. They should be terrified, because their colonies are next. The Federation just told us exactly what they think of human life. 3 days later, the survivor ships docked at Earth's orbital stations. Park So-min had barely slept during the journey home, spending her time organizing the evidence they had collected. Lee Jun-woo had helped her prepare a complete technical analysis of Federation weapons and tactics. The Global Assembly Hall had never been so full. Representatives from every human world attended in person or by hologram. News feeds carried the session live to billions of people across human space. Park So-min walked to the witness stand on legs that shook with exhaustion and grief. She was 28 years old, and she had just watched her entire world die. Now she had to convince humanity to go to war against impossible odds. My name is Park So-min, she began, her voice steady despite her tears. I was a xenobiology researcher on New Busan Colony. 6 months ago, I watched the Galactic Federation murder my father and 2.3 million innocent people. She activated the holographic display, showing the assembled leaders exactly what had happened. Admiral Vextar's face appeared above the assembly, his words echoing through the chamber. Insects. Your evacuation request is denied. The room erupted in angry shouts. Representatives stood and demanded immediate military action. Others called for diplomatic protests. A few suggested evacuation of the outer colonies. President Choi Dong-min called for silence. Continue your testimony, Park So-min. The Federation didn't attack us because we broke any laws, she said, her voice growing stronger. They attacked us because we exist, because we're spreading through space too quickly, for their comfort, because they see us as a threat to their control. She showed them the tax records proving New Busan had paid every demanded tribute. She displayed the colony's peaceful activities, their contributions to galactic trade and science. We were good citizens, she continued. We followed their rules. We paid their taxes. We asked for nothing but the right to live in peace, and they burned us alive for it. Lee Jun-woo stepped forward to present the technical data. During the attack, I managed to record detailed scans of their fleet. Their ships are powerful, but they're old designs. They rely on overwhelming numbers rather than superior technology. Dr. Han Na-young leaned forward in her seat. This was exactly the kind of intelligence Earth needed. Their tactics are straightforward, Lee Jun-woo continued. Mass bombardment followed by occupation. They don't expect resistance, so they don't prepare for it. Their formations are designed to intimidate, not to fight determined opponents. How many ships would we need to match their numbers? Commander Jang Min-ho asked. Lee Jun-woo looked at Park So-min, then back at the assembly. Based on what I observed, we would need at least 500,000 ships to guarantee victory against their main battle fleets. The chamber fell silent. 500,000 ships was 10 times Earth's current military capacity. It seemed impossible. Defense Minister HFY Rim stood up. With respect to the survivors, building 500,000 ships would take us 50 years, even if we devoted our entire industrial capacity to it. The Federation won't wait 50 years to attack another colony. Park So-min looked around the chamber at the faces of humanity's leaders. She saw fear, anger, and despair. But she also saw something else. She saw the same look her father had worn when he decided to stay behind and coordinate the evacuation. You're thinking like Federation citizens, she said loudly, her voice carrying across the chamber. You're thinking like people who kneel when threatened. But we're not Federation citizens. We're humans. President Choi Dong-min gestured for her to continue. The Federation thinks they know us because they've dealt with a few human traders and diplomats. They think we're just another client species that will submit when faced with superior force. They're wrong. She activated another display, showing images of human history, wars, revolutions, desperate stands against overwhelming odds. Humans don't surrender when threatened, she said. We fight. When someone murders our families, we don't negotiate. We don't retreat. We don't kneel, we make them pay. Commander Jang Min-ho stood up. Park So-min, I understand your anger, but we have to be realistic. Even if we could build 500,000 ships, we don't have the crews to operate them. Then we'll train crews, Park So-min replied immediately. Every human world will contribute. Every family that wants justice for New Busan will send their sons and daughters to serve. The logistics alone would be impossible, Defense Minister Yoon Hai-rim protested. Lee Jun-woo stepped forward again. Minister, with respect, you're still thinking like a Federation citizen. You're thinking about what's practical, what's safe, what's economically feasible. But this isn't about economics anymore. He gestured toward the images of burning New Busan that still hung in the air above them. This is about survival, he said. The Federation has told us exactly what our future holds if we submit. They'll tax us until we starve, then kill us when we can't pay. They'll murder our children and call it pest control. President Choi Dong-min had heard enough. He stood and addressed the assembly directly. The Federation believes they have sent us a message, he said, his voice carrying the authority of his office. They believe they have shown us our place in their galactic order. They believe we will kneel. He paused, looking around the chamber. At the representatives of 43 human worlds, they are wrong. We will not kneel. The transformation began immediately. Within days of President Choi Dong-min's declaration, every human world was mobilizing for war. What happened next defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about human capabilities. Commander Jang Min-ho, now promoted to Supreme Admiral, stood in the newly constructed Strategic Command Center on Luna. The facility had been built in 3 weeks, a construction timeline that would have taken most species 6 months to complete. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at stations displaying real-time data from across human space. Status report, he called to his aide, Captain Oh Mi-jin. Sir, recruitment is exceeding all projections, she replied, consulting her tablet. We have over 50 million volunteers for military service. Every world is contributing beyond their quotas. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho shook his head in amazement. 50 million volunteers in 2 months. The Federation military academies took decades to train officers for a fraction of that number. What about ship production? That's where it gets interesting, sir. Captain Oh Mi-jin pulled up a holographic display showing shipyard activity across human space. Engineer Bae Sung-ho's new construction methods are working better than anyone predicted. On the display, Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho could see dozens of worlds where massive shipyards had appeared almost overnight. Traditional Federation thinking said you needed to build shipyards first, then train workers, then slowly ramp up production. Humans had skipped those steps entirely. Engineer Bae Sung-ho had developed modular construction techniques that allowed entire communities to build warship components in converted factories, garages, even school workshops. The pieces were then assembled in orbital yards that themselves had been constructed using the same modular approach. The Koreans on New Seoul are leading production, Captain Oh Mi-jin continued. They've managed to cut construction time per ship from 8 months to 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho couldn't hide his surprise. How is that possible? Dr. Han Na-young entered the command center at that moment, overhearing the question. As Director of Military Technology, she had been working 18-hour days to make the impossible production timeline reality. It's possible because we stopped thinking like the Federation, she explained, joining them at the holographic display. Federation shipyards build one ship at a time using traditional methods that haven't changed in centuries. We're building them like humans build things. She modified the display to show a detailed view of the New Seoul shipyards. Assembly. Line production, just like we used for cars and aircraft centuries ago. Each ship moves through stages with specialized teams working on different components simultaneously. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho studied the display. What about quality control? Federation ships are built slowly because they need to be perfect. Federation ships are built slowly because they're built by slaves, Dr. Han Na-young said bluntly. Most Federation member species are forced to contribute labor and materials. They have no investment in the final product. Our people are building these ships to avenge their murdered families. That made the difference clear. Every human working in the shipyards had seen the footage from New Busan. They had watched Admiral Vextar dismiss human lives as worthless insects. They worked with a fury that no pressed labor force could match. "Show me the ship designs," Supreme Admiral Jang Minho ordered. Dr. Han Na-young activated another display, revealing the sleek lines of the new Earth-built warships. They looked different from Federation vessels, more angular and aggressive. "We've incorporated everything Lee Junwoo observed during the New Busan attack," she explained. "Federation shields are designed to stop their own weapons. Our guns use different energy frequencies that their shields can't deflect effectively. What about their advantages in numbers? We're equalizing that too. Each of our ships carries more firepower than comparable Federation vessels, and we've developed new tactics that Federation commanders have never seen." As if summoned by the conversation, Lee Junwoo arrived with the latest intelligence reports. His work as Director of Alien Affairs had proven invaluable, establishing contact with resistance groups throughout Federation space. "The Etherian Collective wants to join our cause," he reported. "They've been planning their own rebellion against Federation rule. Our war could provide the cover they need." Supreme Admiral Jang Minho nodded. "What about Federation response to our buildup?" "They're not taking us seriously," Lee Junwoo said with satisfaction. "Their intelligence reports dismiss our ship, construction claims as primitive propaganda. Admiral Vextar himself stated that humans are mathematically incapable of building more than a few thousand ships." Dr. Han Na-young laughed harshly. "He's about to learn about human mathematics." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Park So-min, who was coordinating intelligence operations from the outer colonies. Her image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from a hidden base near Federation territory. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "Federation patrols are increasing near human colonies. Intelligence suggests they're planning another demonstration." Supreme Admiral Jang Minho's face hardened. "Which colony?" "New Incheon. Same pattern as New Busan. They're demanding increased taxes that the colony can't possibly pay." The room fell silent. New Incheon had 800,000 residents, mostly families who had emigrated from Earth just 5 years ago. If the Federation attacked them, it would be New Busan all over again. "How long until our fleet is ready?" Supreme Admiral Jang Minho asked. "Full deployment in 14 months. Captain Omi Jin replied immediately. "But we could deploy the first wave in 8 months. "The Federation won't wait 8 months, Dr. Han Na-young said grimly. Park So-min's voice came through clearly. "Then we need to accelerate the timeline. How many ships do we have ready right now?" Supreme Admiral Jang Minho checked the production reports. 12,000 completed with another 8,000 in final assembly. "That's enough for a demonstration of our own," Park So-min suggested. "Show the Federation that attacking human colonies has consequences." Lee Junwoo looked up from his intelligence reports. "I recommend we target the base where Admiral Vexitar is stationed. Hit them hard enough to make them reconsider, but not so hard that they escalate immediately." Dr. Han Na-young was already running calculations. 20,000 ships could destroy a Federation base, but we'd need to make sure we don't start the full war before we're ready. Supreme Admiral Jang Minho made the decision. "We proceed with the demonstration. Captain Omi Jin, I want the first squadron ready for deployment in 1 week." "Sir, that will require pulling ships from 6 different production lines before final systems checks, then pull them. The Federation thinks we're incapable of rapid response. Let's prove them wrong." As the meeting broke up, each officer rushing to implement the new orders, Supreme Admiral Jang Minho remained behind to study the tactical displays. 20,000 ships. 6 months ago, that would have represented nearly half of humanity's total military capacity. Now it was just the advance guard of something much larger. Engineer Bae Sung-ho arrived an hour later, his uniform wrinkled from working in the shipyards personally. Despite his high position, he insisted on spending time on the production floor, solving technical problems alongside the workers. "Admiral, we need to discuss crew training," he said, pulling up personnel reports. "We're building ships faster than we can train people to operate them." "How much faster?" "At current production rates, we'll have 200,000 ships completed before We have fully trained crews for half of them. Supreme Admiral Zhang Minho frowned. This was the problem he had been dreading. What do you recommend? Accelerated training programs. Instead of the traditional 2-year officer training, we use 6-month intensive courses. Focus on essential skills only. Will that produce competent officers? Engineer Bei Sung-ho shrugged. It will produce motivated officers. And motivated. Officers learn faster than bored ones. That was another difference between human and Federation military thinking. Federation officers spent years in training because they were preparing for long, stable careers in peacetime service. Human officers were preparing to fight and die for their family's survival. Dr. Han Na-young returned with the latest test results from the new weapon systems. The plasma cannons are exceeding performance expectations, she reported. In simulations, our ships can destroy Federation battleships in one-on-one combat. What about their numerical advantages? That's where our new tactics come in. Federation fleets operate in traditional formations designed for ship-to-ship combat. Our ships are designed for swarm tactics. She activated a simulation showing human ships in action. Instead of the stately line battles favored by Federation commanders, human ships moved in rapid, coordinated attacks that overwhelmed enemy defenses through speed and concentration of firepower. We attack from multiple directions simultaneously, destroy key targets, then withdraw before they can respond effectively. It's like fighting wolves instead of elephants. Supreme Admiral Zhang Minho smiled for the first time in months. The Federation has been fighting the same way for centuries. They won't know how to respond to something completely different. As the months passed, the impossible became routine. Ship production. 18 months after New Busan burned, the impossible had become reality. Supreme Admiral Zhang Minho stood on the command bridge of the massive flagship Righteous Fury, watching through the viewports as the largest military fleet in Galactic. History completed its final formation. 500,000 ships. The number still seemed unreal, even seeing it with his own eyes. Sleek human warships stretched in every direction, their hulls gleaming with the names of New Busan's dead carved into the metal. Every ship carried those names as a reminder of why they were here. Final count, Admiral? He asked Captain Omi Jin, who now served as his fleet coordinator. 847 ships ready for combat operations, she reported. 153 ships still completing final systems checks, but will be ready within the hour. Supreme Admiral Zhang Minho nodded. Close enough to 500,000 for their purposes. Around the bridge, his staff worked with the calm efficiency of people who had prepared for this moment for over a year. Commander Kang Hyun-sik approached from the tactical station. He commanded the elite strike squadrons, the fastest ships in the fleet designed for hit-and-run attacks against Federation command vessels. Sir, Federation intelligence is calling our fleet size mathematically impossible, he reported with barely contained amusement. Admiral Vextar's latest communication to Federation Command states that humans are clearly engaging in primitive propaganda, and that our actual force is probably a few thousand outdated vessels. Dr. Han Na-young looked up from her technology station. He's about to get a very educational lesson in human mathematics. The months since the demonstration attack on Kepler Station had been busy ones. That first strike had achieved everything Supreme Admiral Zhang Minho had hoped. 20,000 human ships had appeared without warning, destroyed the station's defenses in 12 minutes, and vanished before Federation reinforcements could arrive. Admiral Vextar had survived the attack, but his third fleet had been reduced to scrap metal. The Federation's response had been predictably arrogant. They claimed the attack was a terrorist action by a small group of human extremists, and that the main Federation forces would easily crush any human resistance. They had no idea what was coming. Park. So Min's voice crackled over the communication system from her position with the intelligence fleet. Admiral, our contacts in Federation space report massive panic among their military leadership. They're trying to assemble a defense fleet, but most of their ships are scattered across the galaxy maintaining control of their member species. How many ships are they managing to gather? Supreme Admiral Zhang Minho asked. Approximately 80,000 in their main battle fleet, with another 120,000 in supporting formations. They're stripping defenses from across their territory. Li Junwu's face appeared on the secondary screen, transmitting from his position with the diplomatic corps. Sir, we have confirmation that 17 Federation member species are ready to join our cause once the fighting begins. The Etherian Collective has already begun sabotaging Federation supply lines. Supreme Admiral Jiang Minho smiled grimly. The Federation had spent centuries maintaining control through fear and overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy that could match their numbers while simultaneously inspiring rebellion among their own subjects. Dr. Han Na-young, status of our weapons systems. All ships are equipped with the new plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes, she reported. Our weapons use energy frequencies that Federation shields can't deflect. We have a significant technological advantage in ship-to-ship combat. Engineer Bei Sung-ho joined the conversation from his position monitoring the fleet's technical status. Admiral, I'm still amazed we managed to build all these ships. 18 months ago, this would have seemed like pure fantasy. What made the difference? Supreme Admiral Jiang Minho asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Motivation? Sir, every person who worked on these ships had seen the footage from New Busan. They weren't just building warships, they were building instruments of justice. That was the key difference between human and Federation manufacturing. Federation ships were built by conscripted labor from conquered species who had no investment in the final product. Human ships were built by volunteers who saw each vessel as a chance to avenge murdered families. The quality difference showed in every system. Human ships were more reliable, more powerful, and more innovative than anything the Federation had produced in centuries. Their crews trained harder, fought smarter, and cared more about the outcome. Captain Omijin signaled the fleet. All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. Destination, sir? Saurus Prime. It's time to show Admiral Vextar what happens when you murder human children. The hyperspace jump took 6 hours. When the human fleet emerged at the edge of the Saurus system, the effect on Federation defenders was exactly what Supreme Admiral Jiang Minho had hoped for. The Federation Defense Fleet had been arranged in traditional formation around Saurus Prime, expecting a conventional assault. Their 80,000 ships looked impressive until 500,000 human vessels appeared around them in perfect attack formation. Admiral Vexitar's panicked voice filled the communication channels. Impossible! Humans cannot have built so many ships. This must be some kind of holographic deception. Supreme Admiral Jiang Minho opened a direct channel to the Federation flagship. Admiral Vextar, this is Supreme Admiral Jiang Minho of the human fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned 6-1. Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war. Humans do not dictate terms to the Federation. Vextar snarled. You are insects who have forgotten your place. We remember. Our place very well. Supreme Admiral Jiang Minho replied coldly. Our place is standing over the graves of our enemies. Attack formation, all ships. Show them what insects can do when properly motivated. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Federation fleet, trained for traditional line combat, found themselves facing tactics they had never encountered. Human ships attacked in coordinated swarms, appearing from multiple directions simultaneously. Commander Kang Hyun-sik led the first wave, his elite squadrons targeting Federation command ships with surgical precision. Primary command vessel, destroyed, he reported as Admiral Vextar's flagship exploded under concentrated fire. Secondary command ship crippled. Federation fleet coordination is breaking down. Captain Omijin coordinated the main assault, directing hundreds of thousands of ships with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. Sectors 7 through 12. Concentrate fire on their battle line. Sectors 1 through 6 begin. Flanking maneuvers. Dr. Han Na-young monitored the weapon's effectiveness from her technical station. Plasma cannon performance exceeding projections. Federation shields are providing minimal protection. Their return fire is having limited effect on our armor. Engineer Bei Sung-ho tracked the engineering performance across the massive fleet. All ships reporting green status. No significant mechanical failures. Our construction quality is holding up perfectly under combat conditions. The Federation fleet tried to respond with their traditional tactics, but they were designed for fighting other Federation member species who used similar strategies. Human tactics were completely alien to them, where Federation ships fought in rigid formations. Human ships moved like schools of fish, coordinating without central command. Where Federation tactics emphasized individual ship duels, human tactics focused on overwhelming single targets with concentrated firepower. Within 2 hours, the Federation defense fleet was effectively destroyed. Of their 80,000 ships, only a few thousand managed to escape into hyperspace. The rest were either destroyed or surrendered when their crews realized the hopelessness of their position. Admiral Vextar's escape pod has been recovered, Commander Kang Hyun-sik reported. He survived the destruction of his flagship. Bring him to the command ship, Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho ordered. I want to speak with him personally. An hour later, Admiral Vextar stood in the detention cell aboard Righteous Fury, his reptilian features twisted with rage and disbelief. His uniform was torn, and his yellow eyes glared at his captors with undimmed hatred. This is impossible, he kept repeating. Humans cannot build fleets like this. You are a primitive species that learned spaceflight only centuries ago. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho studied his prisoner through the force field. You made the mistake of thinking that age equals wisdom, Admiral. You assumed that because humans are new to space, we must be weak. You are weak. This fleet is some kind of trick. The 2.3 million dead civilians on New Busan weren't a trick, Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho said coldly. Neither are the 500,000 ships that just destroyed your fleet. Vexatar's eyes narrowed. Even if you have built this fleet, you cannot defeat the entire Federation. We have billions of ships across thousands of systems. You will be crushed. Perhaps, but not by you, and not without cost. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho turned to leave, then paused. Tell me, Admiral, did you enjoy murdering children on New Busan? Did it make you feel powerful, burning schools and hospitals? They were insects, Vextar snarled. Pests that needed to be eliminated, I see. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho's voice was perfectly calm. Captain Omijin, signal the fleet. We proceed to the next target, Admiral Vexta. The human fleet moved through Federation space like a tide of iron and fire. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho stood on the bridge of Righteous Fury, watching another Federation stronghold surrender without firing a shot. It had become a common occurrence over the past 6 months. That's the 43rd system to surrender peacefully, Captain Omijin reported. The Altarian Defense Fleet is requesting terms for honorable capitulation. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho nodded approvingly. Standard terms. Military personnel to be interned, civilians to be protected, war criminals to be identified for trial. No reprisals against non-combatants. This was the strategy that had proven most effective. Demonstrate overwhelming force, then show mercy to those who surrendered. It created a stark contrast with Federation tactics, which relied on terror and brutal repression. Dr. Han Na-young looked up from her analysis station. Admiral, we're receiving reports that Federation member species are declaring independence, faster than we can liberate them. The Vegan Trade Confederation just announced they're forming their own government. The Empire is collapsing from within, observed Lee Junwoo, who had become the fleet's specialist in alien politics. When you rule through fear, removing that fear destroys everything. Commander Kang Hyun-sik entered the bridge, fresh from leading another successful strike against Federation forces. Sir, the Nexus Station operation was a complete success. We destroyed their command infrastructure and captured their entire strategic database. Casualties? Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho asked. Minimal on our side. The Federation defenders were already demoralized. Most surrendered as soon as we demonstrated our firepower. That had been the pattern across dozens of battles. Federation, forces trained to fight rebellions by inferior species, were psychologically unprepared for an enemy that matched their numbers and exceeded their technology. When faced with determined human resistance, their morale collapsed quickly. Park So-min's image appeared on the communication screen, transmitted from her position coordinating intelligence operations near the Federation capital. Admiral, I have news from Soros Prime. The Soroid High Command is requesting a ceasefire. What are their terms? complete withdrawal from all human systems, war reparations for New Busan, and the trial of Admiral Vextar for war crimes. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho considered this. Not enough. We didn't come this far to accept partial justice. Engineer Bae Sung-ho joined the conversation from his position monitoring fleet operations. Sir, our logistics situation is actually better than projected. The surrendering systems are providing supplies and support voluntarily. We can sustain operations indefinitely. This was another advantage humans had discovered. When you liberate people instead of conquering them, they help rather than resist. Federation logistics had always struggled with sabotage and rebellion. Human logistics were supported by grateful populations. What's our current fleet status? Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho asked. 47,000 ships operational, Captain Oh Mi-jin replied. We've lost less than 15,000 vessels in 6 months of campaigning. Most of those were damaged rather than destroyed. The low casualty rate reflected both superior human technology and tactics, and the poor morale of Federation forces. When your enemy believes they're fighting for justice while you're fighting to maintain oppression, the outcome becomes predictable. Admiral, Commander Kang Hyun-sik said, I have a proposal for the final assault. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho gestured for him to continue. Instead of a massive fleet battle, I suggest we focus on precision strikes against key targets. The Federation, High Council, their main military academies, their central communication hubs, cut off the head rather than grinding through their remaining forces. Dr. Han Na-young nodded approvingly. That approach would minimize casualties on both sides while achieving our strategic objectives. Lee Jun-woo added, it would also demonstrate that we're fighting for justice, not conquest. The liberated species would see us as liberators rather than new conquerors. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho made his decision. Prepare the strike plans. But first, I want to address the Federation, High Council directly. An hour later, human signals penetrated every communication network in Federation space. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho's face appeared on screens across thousands of worlds as he delivered humanity's final ultimatum. Citizens of the Galactic Federation, he began, his voice calm and authoritative. I am Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho of the human fleet. For 18 months, we have been engaged in a war that began when your leaders chose to murder 2.3 million innocent civilians on New Busan colony. The transmission showed footage from New Busan's destruction, images that many Federation citizens had never seen. Admiral Vexitar's dismissal of human lives as insects played across billions of screens. Your leaders told you this was a police action against primitive rebels, Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho continued. The truth is that your government committed genocide against defenseless families, including children, for the crime of being human. More footage played. Human children playing in New Busan schools, families working in the fields, scientists researching cures for diseases that affected multiple species. All of them reduced to ash by Federation bombardment. We did not ask for this war. We asked only for the right to live in peace. Your leaders decided that right did not exist for humans. The transmission switched to show the human fleet in all its terrible majesty. 500,000 ships arranged in perfect battle formation, each one carrying the names of New Busan's dead. This is our response to genocide. Not conquest, not revenge, but justice. We have come to ensure that what happened to New Busan never happens to anyone again. Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho's expression hardened. To the Federation High Council, I offer these terms. Complete dissolution of the current government, establishment of a galactic confederation based on voluntary membership, and the trial of all those responsible for war crimes against civilians. He paused, letting the weight of the ultimatum settle. You have 24 hours to respond. If you refuse, we will remove you from power by force. If you accept, the transition will be peaceful and orderly. The choice is yours. The transmission ended, leaving Federation space in chaos. On some worlds, local governors immediately declared independence. On others, Federation loyalists prepared for desperate last stands. And in the Federation capital system, the High Council met in emergency session, Park So-min monitored their communications from her intelligence position. "They're arguing about surrender versus fighting to the end," she reported. "But their military advisors are telling them the truth. They can't win." The Federation's remaining forces numbered in the hundreds of thousands, but they were scattered and demoralized. More importantly, they lacked the technological advantages and tactical flexibility that had made the human fleet so effective. 23 hours and 47 minutes after the ultimatum was delivered, the Federation High Council transmitted their response. Council Speaker Mordan, an elderly insectoid who had ruled the Federation for decades, appeared on screen looking defeated. "The Galactic Federation accepts human terms for ceasefire and transition," he announced. We surrender unconditionally." Across human space, celebrations erupted. On Earth, President Choi Dong-min addressed crowds gathered in every major city. On the colony worlds, families who had lived in fear of Federation reprisals finally felt safe. But Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho felt no celebration, only grim satisfaction. Justice had been served, but at a terrible cost. The war had lasted 18 months and claimed millions of lives, all because a handful of beings had decided that human life was worthless. 3 months later, Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho stood in a very different setting, the rebuilt courthouse on New Busan. The planet had been terraformed again, this time as a memorial world where the new Galactic Confederation would be governed. Admiral Vextar stood in the defendant's dock, no longer the arrogant predator who had ordered a planet's murder. Months of imprisonment and the destruction of his empire had broken much of his spirit, but his yellow eyes still held traces of their old hatred. "Admiral Vextar," Judge Kim Min-soo read from the charges, "you are accused of genocide, war crimes against civilians, and crimes against sapient life. How do you plead?" "I plead that I was following Federation policy," Vextar said, his voice lacking its former commanding tone. "Everything I did was legal under Federation law." Judge Kim Min-soo, herself a survivor of New Busan, who had lost her entire family in the bombardment, looked at him with cold eyes. Federation law permitted the murder of children? They were not children, they were insects, pests that needed to be eliminated. A murmur of anger ran through the courtroom, but Judge Kim Min-soo maintained order. "The court finds you guilty on all charges. You will spend the remainder of your natural life in prison, with the opportunity to contemplate the value of the lives you destroyed." As Vextar was led away, Supreme Admiral Jang Min-ho felt a chapter closing. The war was over. Justice had been served. But the real work was just beginning. Park So-min, now Director of Galactic Relations, joined him outside the courthouse. "The Etherian Collective has officially joined the Confederation," she reported. "That makes 47 member species in the first month. Any resistance var